act of unspeakable brutality. J'aimerais faire le point sur les mesures que prend notre
I want to provide an update on the measures our government is taking to help and protect Canadians affected. I also want to share the real concerns that the situation is causing amongst our people in this country, among Jewish and Muslim Canadians, Canadians of Arabic origins, and all Canadians.
Parmi les milliers de
Mr. Speaker, among the thousands of people affected by this violence, 5 Canadians were murdered by Hamas terrorists. 3 Canadians are reported missing and may be hostages. I know that all parliamentarians and Canadians' thoughts are with them and their loved ones. Canada asks Hamas to free all the hostages immediately.
Canadian Armed Forces flights have departed Tel Aviv so far, with approximately 1,300 passengers on board. In addition, the first bus has departed the West Bank and brought Canadians to safety in Jordan. Le Ministre des Affaires mondiales et
The Minister of Global Affairs and our ambassadors in the region are working tirelessly in order to help them.
travaillent sans relâche afin d'entrer en contact.
They're working tirelessly to come into contact with the Canadians that are affected and to help them.
Et nos partenaires pour aider les gens.
We're working with our partners to help Gaza leave the Gaza Strip and Israel the safest way possible, as well as the fastest way possible.
Deeply concerned by the dire and worsening humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Canada is calling for unimpeded humanitarian access and a humanitarian corridor so that essential aid like food, fuel, and water can be delivered to civilians in Gaza. It is imperative that this happen. Depuis la fin de semaine dernière,
Since last weekend, I have communicated with leaders in the region, such as the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, the President of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, King Abdullah of Jordan, the President of the United Arab Emirates, and the President of Egypt, and the Emir of Qatar. I discussed freeing Canadian hostages and all hostages, of providing humanitarian assistance and providing assistance to Canadians so that they are brought to safety, as well as for maintaining peace and stability in the region. Minister Jolie was on the ground. She's directing our diplomatic efforts, working day and night, meeting Israelis, Palestinians, and other partners in the region.
Is working tirelessly to ensure that CAF evacuation flights are getting as many Canadians out of the region as possible. And Minister Hussein is leading conversations with his international counterparts with
I apologize to interrupt the Right Honourable Prime Minister, but of course to remember that we are to refer to members by their titles, either titles as the positions that they hold or as members of Parliament, but not by their names.
My apologies, Mr. Speaker. The Minister of National Defence is working tirelessly to ensure that CAF evacuation flights are getting as many Canadians out of the region as possible, and the Minister of International Development is leading conversations with his international counterparts and with aid organizations, making sure essential support is getting to affected people. Canada has committed an initial $10 million in humanitarian assistance to provide essentials like food, water, emergency medical aid, and protection assistance to those affected by the crisis in Gaza, the West Bank, and Israel. And I want to be clear, none of this aid is going to Hamas. Hamas is a terrorist organization that slaughtered and brutalized innocent people. Hamas continues to commit unspeakable atrocities and are trying to instigate further acts of violence against Jewish people. Let me be clear about Hamas. They are not freedom fighters. They are not a resistance. They are terrorists. Terrorism is always indefensible, and nothing can justify Hamas's acts of terror and the killing, maiming, and abduction of civilians. But let me also be extremely clear that Hamas does not represent the Palestinian people nor their legitimate aspirations. They do not speak for Muslim or Arab communities. They do not represent the better future that Palestinians and their children deserve. The only thing they stand for is more suffering for Israeli and Palestinian civilians. Canada fully supports Israel's right to defend itself in accordance with international law. And in Gaza, as elsewhere, international law, including humanitarian law, must be upheld by all. Even wars have rules. Canada is always steadfast in our commitment to the rule of law. The rule of law is what we stand up for here in Parliament, what we advocate through diplomacy, and what we will always fight for, no matter the circumstance. Ici, au pays, les émotions.
Here in our country, emotions are running extremely high. It can be explained in part by the fact that many of these stories are Canadian stories. That's due to our diversity. Many of us know someone who's been affected, or we know someone who knows someone. I met members of the Jewish community grieving in the aftermath of this tragedy. I was told about young people who were shot down during a music festival. The murder and kidnapping of older people, of women, of children. Members of the Jewish community talked to us about friends who died too soon and their fears of seeing their loved ones taken hostage.
From the Muslim and Palestinian community. They told me about how families in Gaza are spreading themselves between homes to prevent the possibility that they could all be lost in a single moment. That from Canada, they worry desperately about their loved ones, but because electricity has been cut off, they have to rely on sporadic 15-second phone calls to know who is safe. Their worries aren't just for people overseas. The worries are about people here at home, too. Across our country, both Jewish parents and Muslim parents wonder whether their kids are safe at school. Families are worried about going to places of worship. Jewish people are wondering if they shouldn't wear their Star of David or kippah in public. Muslim and Arab people are worried about being thought of as terrorists once again. The list of worries is endless, and the fear is real. There are rising instances of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. We saw the reports of hate crimes against a Muslim woman in Montreal and at a Hebrew school in Toronto. And all of our hearts break at the horrifying news that came out of Illinois yesterday. There are so many people in Canada who are afraid of the escalating tension here at home, who are scared as they watch horrible things happen to people in places that they love in the Middle East, who for years have lived somewhere between fear and hope. Fear that escalation will tear them further apart, and hope that one day peace could finally take root. Il ne faut jamais oublier que la diversité.
Never forget that diversity is our strength. Canada welcomes people from all horizons who have a plethora of identities. We are a country of neighbors, of colleagues, of friends, of family. We represent that diversity and we live it every day. Now, more than ever, we have to unite. We have to avoid letting worries and suspicion separate us.
It's a short path from mistrusting your neighbor to entrenching division. A peaceful society does not happen by accident and won't continue without effort. We live in a country that upholds the freedom of expression, including religious and cultural expression, and every Canadian should feel safe doing so. This is the right and freedom every Canadian has under our Charter. Canadian liberty is not about taking away the freedoms of others, but living in a way that expands and strengthens freedom for everyone. Monsieur le Président, comme Canadiens,
Mr. Speaker, as Canadians, we've proven that it's possible to build and define a country based on, anchored in, common values.
ne se définit
Canada is not defined by one single identity, whether it be historical or ethnic or religious or anything else, but through shared values.
once again at a moment where our shared values are being put to the test. Unrest is being felt in ways big and small. Canadians are deeply worried, no matter their background. This is why we must hold on to our commitment to the idea of this country. We've been tested before about who we are and what we are. But the core values of Canada have always been there to guide us, to make us stronger, to bring us together when forces or events try to divide us. Our diversity is our strength. We can never forget this. This is a time to reach out, to support one another. Ask a friend, a family member, or a colleague how they're doing. Reach out to members of a different faith. Offer to listen. Offer to help where you can. People are not all right. So let's make sure they're not alone. As I've said before, the Canadian idea of liberty is an inclusive freedom, expansive freedom. Let's remember who we are as Canadians and what we stand for here and around the world. Respect for everyone's rights and freedoms and the rule of law. Respect for different languages, ethnicities, and religions. Respect for human life. And respect for each other. Thank you.